there are certain coding concepts that I think are particularly difficult to wrap your brain around. One of those things is email. The other one is the model view controller, the MVC. I don't know why, but I could not get, you could not explain to me the MVC model. And I don't know why. Like, I watched a lot of videos about it. I had people try and explain it to me, and I just couldn't get it. And that's crazy to me, right? Like, people come up with these diagrams and analogies to explain a coding concept, but there's certain things that you just can't understand until you actually start to do it. And when I started learning Laravel, then after I started learning that, I started going through tutorials on Laravel and how Laravel works, and I actually started building sites with Laravel. Then I understood what MVC was. But my point is that there's something about actually doing something that helps you to understand it better. And if you're having a difficult time understanding MVC, I challenge you to try to learn a framework. My suggestion would be Laravel, just because that's what I know. But if you learn a framework, it helps you to understand. It helps you to understand the models that they use. And that's really the only way that I know how to learn the MVC model, is by actually doing it. And I know that sounds crazy, because you would think that you'd have to wrap your head around it before you're able to start building an application in it. But that's not true. I think that the best way to learn it is to do it. And that goes against all of the concepts of learning that I've thought in the past. But actually, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. The process of learning is the process of doing. When you start to build an application, you learn all kinds of things along the way. You learn about how to code. You learn about the concepts of programming. In a lot of cases, you learn the way the framework works, the MVC, and that's I think that's the best way to learn it. I don't think that there's a concept or analogy that's going to help you wrap your head around MVC. I think that you just have to do it. Because I'm not a dumb person, right? I feel like I'm relatively intelligent, and I tried looking at all the videos, and I tried having people explain it, and the analogies and the explanations, they don't really help. I mean, they do help to a point. You're able to understand it a little bit better, but until you're actually doing it makes absolutely no sense. So my encouragement to you is, if you're having a challenge learning MVC, get into a framework. You don't have to use that framework forever, but you need to get in the framework so that you understand how it works. And I'm a big proponent of frameworks, because I think that they help you do a lot of stupid stuff that people have figured out and solved the problems to years ago. But you don't have to stick to the framework. My skills as a web developer have been improved because I understand some of these coding concepts that were previously confusing to me. Now, when I build an application, if I were going to build a framework of my own, I would do it using an MVC model, and I wouldn't be able to understand or to do that until I understood it, and I wouldn't have understood it unless I had like actually used something that was built using that methodology. What? Here's an example. You don't, when you go to work a job, I'm assuming that you've worked some jobs before. When you go to work a job, someone can explain to you everything about the business. And from a bird's eye view, maybe you get it, like you get what the business does. But when you actually start working in the business, you get all the nuances of it, like where all the screws and the bolts are, like the process, why it's complicated, why is it, it's easy for someone to explain the business and say, oh, I can see, where your bottlenecks are, and you need to change this process or that process. But then when you actually start doing the work, there's a lot of nuance to it. Like the way that the business is the way that it is for a reason. And maybe it's not perfect, but it's the way that it is for a reason. And there's a lot of people who put a lot of thought into the way that business is run, and you can't just uproot it without making some major changes to like the culture and the philosophy behind how the process works. And with MVC, it's the exact same thing. You need to get into the weeds of it and actually start using the models and using the views and the controllers to really understand what any of those things do, especially if you're not a programmer and you're not familiar with any of these kinds of concepts. And it makes it difficult. But when you use the framework, you get all the nitty-gritty details about, oh, I see you got to use backslashes, or you got to use forward slashes, and you get all those little things that you would have no idea about if you didn't use the framework. And if you were to try and build it from scratch, you wouldn't even know where to start. And there's a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me or you who have put brain power into thinking about how these things work. And it's something that I think is good for you to get exposure to the way that the other people do things. And I think I explained before that when I first started, my thought process was that I wanted to learn how to code everything from scratch. And I think that mentality is good to a point, especially when you're starting out, because there's something about code that's like magical. You create a variable, then you access that variable later on the code, and you do some math with it, and it's like magical. And you're like, wow, I could build anything with this. And yeah, you can build anything with it, but there's a lot of the things behind the scenes that are a lot of the philosophy of it it's not complicated, but it took a lot of years for people to come up with these ideas about the way that code should be structured. And when you accept those limitations and you say, okay, I'm going to limit myself in what I can code to the philosophy that somebody else has already thought about and said this is a good framework to follow. When you basically surrender to that and you adhere to it, you can have total freedom to code whatever you want within the boundaries of the philosophy, and it helps you to actually build things that are secure and that work and are stable. And the only things that really have bugs are the things that you coded, and the things that you coded are they're a lot less important to the stability of the app. I mean, there's a lot of things. I could go on and on about it, but those are my thoughts about MVC. If you want to learn it, you got to jump into a framework. I think that that's the fastest way. I really do. And, you know, who knows what else you might learn along the way. Like when I started learning Laravel, I started learning about MVC. They use a concept in there called routes, which has to do with the path in the URL bar that you type. And like, that's something that I didn't even care about before. It wasn't that important to me. But now that I have started using routes, I'm like, wow, this is something that's actually really important. So yeah, you gotta learn a framework. I think that is the fastest way to learn MVC, and you're going to really appreciate a lot of the nuance and the details about what that means, and you're going to realize how complex code can be. So anyways, that's my thoughts on it. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit the like button. Leave a comment down below with what it is that you think, because I am curious what you think. If you need help with anything, I'm here to help. I'm a small YouTube channel, so if you leave me a comment, I'm gonna reply to it. You know, that's just the way that it is. So like I talked about in the last video, I think that we need to create a place where people can ask questions and discuss things with other people that code, because like, where do you do that at? Where are you able to communicate with other people and ask them questions and see if they can help? It's kind of a tough challenge. So I mean, talk to me. I'm here to help. So we'll touch bases, and if you enjoyed this video, please check in tomorrow and I will have another one up, and I will see you then.